We are blessed by Tiffany Wilson. So this month our focus is on the way of walking, which is about following threads in our lives. It's about listening to dreams and synchronicities and drawing those connections. And it's also about physically walking. And so last week we took a walk, a group of us walked over to South Lake Union. And the thing about walking is you notice things that you don't see when you're driving or you're moving around in a different way. And so we walked over to South Lake Union, and there's the Greenpeace ship, and it's docked there. So it was just a wonderful moment where some of us chose to then take a tour of the Greenpeace ship and learn about what they're doing, and others branched off. And there's another walk today. Mariah is leading it, and for those of you who want to go for a walk, it's a beautiful day. She'll meet you either in the lobby or just right outside the door at 11:30, and it'll be about an hour. And it's a great way not only to connect with other members of the community, but it's a great way to connect with this area, which is so constantly changing that if you don't go for a walk, you don't know where you are. It's like, oh, shocker of shockers, where'd that building come from? It's also a bit of a maze because you're walking, street closed, nope, we'll go this way, street closed. So it's a bit of an adventure. So one of the basic unity principles is the practice of prayer and meditation. And when we think of meditation, we probably think of sitting in a cushion and being quiet. And I've had many people come to me and say, you know, I just can't meditate. I can't do it. My back hurts, my knee hurts, I just can't sit still that long. And so today, we're going to practice a walking meditation during the service. Now, why are we going to do that? Because as students of Unity, one of the things that Unity has always done is been practical. We've called ourselves practical Christianity, practical spirituality. And it isn't just about talking about meditation or talking about prayer. It's actually doing it. It's like, let's try this. So we're going to do that at the end of the service. And as always, if you're unable to walk, I invite you to sit and just kind of absorb the energy and have a private meditation. And if you don't want to, guess what? You don't have to. No one is forced to do anything. And this is going to be free form. We're just going to kind of just walk. So why walking meditation? Well, one of the reasons is that it calms the mind. It can get the heart pounding and can improve our mental attitude. Have you ever had a problem that you're working on and then it's like, I think I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a walk and I'm just going to kind of clear my head, right? So it's like nothing new. But I think we have chosen to be born during this interesting time in our history. And I think that we're called right now to be spiritually centered so that we can also be a force for good in the world. Wouldn't you agree? And to be spiritually centered means we need to do some spiritual practices. Because if we don't do our inner work, then we can become discouraged and we can become depressed. And again, this is why we have spiritual practices, because our spiritual practices pull us out of the small self, pulls us out of the ego, and it allows us to erase boundaries and kind of get a different perspective. Now, the first principle of unity is there is only one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. It means goodness is everywhere. And I'm sure just like me, you probably have encounters with people every day where it's just all this, where good things happen or good deeds are done. And we wouldn't know that sometimes because of the news, and so it's important to mark those and to acknowledge those. And I had one this week, so I took the dogs, Hazel and Moxie, to the dog park at Magnuson Park this week. And Hazel is half Maltese and half Poodle, and Moxie is half Cocker Spaniel and Poodle, and they're very different personalities. So I left them in the park because I needed to get something from the car. And this is after we'd walked and gone swimming and they'd had fun. And, for those of you who know Magnuson, it's a chain link fence. You can see the dogs. And I literally was parked, like where the pews are. And I'm like, I'll be right back. You guys stay in the park for a minute. Well, there was a food truck parked right in front of the park, and they were selling dog treats. And so I was curious. I'm like, wow, I've seen food trucks, but never actually seen a dog food truck. So I thought, I'm going to go see what they have. And they had, chicken hearts and chicken feet, and they had like ice cream for dogs, and they had all these treats. And I'm like, well, it's pretty hot today. I'll get them a little ice cream. It wasn't ice cream, it was just banana and peanut butter, but whatever. So they were out of my sight literally for maybe 5-6 minutes at most. And I come walking around just to look at them, and Hazel, there was a space in the fence, had got her head in there, and she was choking to death. She was struggling, and she had her head in there. So I run over, and there on the other side of the fence is a woman, and she's holding onto Hazel so that Hazel doesn't choke herself to death, and we're both holding Hazel. And then she's like, well, we need to unlock the gate. And I said, the gate doesn't unlock, this one's locked. So we're like, okay, so what could we do here? And then we decided that if we put her all the way down on the ground, we could push her underneath, which is what we did. And then I called for Moxie, the other dog, and she said, is that your dog too? And I said, yeah, that's mine. And she said, she ran over to get me. She came and got me and brought me over to Hazel. So what's interesting about this story is Moxie, of course, is amazing, that goodness is in the dog, to save another one, to go get help. But the other part of it is, I never even saw this woman's face. I never even looked at her because I was so focused on the dog. I'm sure I thanked her, but she just stepped right up and she helped me. And that act of goodness, there's Hazel. That act of goodness probably saved Hazel's life. So we're touched every day by acts of kindness and compassion and goodness. And I think it's important that we stop and we acknowledge those and call those out. So the issue that obviously is up right now is immigration. And we have seen the last couple of weeks kids separated from their parents and, put in holding cells and, just this horrible thing that we've been witnessing. And the good news is that the family separation law has ended. It is over. And that there is a task force that's being implemented to reunite families. There's still 2,000 children that are not reunited yet. But I think one of the issues that we need to look at in this issue, as well as in all issues, is the use of our language during this time, right? Because we've heard that, there's an infestation of immigrants. And so what do we hear? When you hear the word infestation, automatically it goes to bugs, right? It goes to a dehumanizing thing. And we need to be conscious of language that becomes dehumanizing, whether it's for immigrants, whether it's for people of other races, whether it's for people of other political parties, or whether it's for people who are of a different sexual orientation. Thank you. So it's really important that we be conscious of this and that we do our part to step forward in this. So when I was at the conference, at the Unity Conference last week, one of our workshops that we went to was called Can We Talk? And it was about having difficult conversations. And so the leader said, okay, we're going to lock the door and we're going to pretend that nobody else is here and anything that is said in this room stays in this room. And then she had a bunch of whiteboards, and on each whiteboard she wrote the different races and, Caucasian and African American and Asian and Latino and then, gay. And she said, all right, what I want us to do now is, and we'd start with one, I want you to say every slur that you've ever heard about this race or these people? And, people at first were like, well, I don't know. But, after a while it got rolling and we had lists. And then she said, all right, so I want you to look at, say Asian, I want you to look at that. And then I want you to who has friends that are Asian? And of course, most everybody did. Could you ever say this about that person? And the answer is no. And then to the Latino, who has friends who are Latinos? We do. Could you ever say anything like this about that person? No. And we went through the whole list, and the point was that when you know someone, when you're friends with someone, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color they are, or what race they are, or what their sexual preference is, or if they're immigrants or they're not immigrants. We're connected, right? We're connected. And what was it that Jesus said? Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to love our neighbors as ourselves. And it is through every individual act that every single one of us does that makes a difference in the world. Whether it's helping a little dog who's got her head stuck in a gate, or standing up for the rights of people. And, I really want to call out that obviously this is the weekend of Gay Pride, and thank you, Cindy and crew, for putting up the rainbow flag. Because it takes the pioneers to begin to make the changes. And I'm wondering, how many in this room are the pioneers? Raise your hands. I know how many people have stood up and have made the changes that need to be changed. And it's not always fun to be in the front lines, is it? I was reading an article about a man whose name is Michael Sam, and he was the first outwardly gay NFL player. And he said, he's always felt like an outsider because of his sexual preference. And he said that, his mom was a Jehovah's Witness, and then they were outsiders. And then he came out and he said, after that, he said, I was cut from the Rams, even though I was in the top 5. And then I went to the Cowboys. I had to do it all over again. And then I was cut there. And he said, and I was always an outsider looking in. But what it led him to do is to be a speaker for rights. And so he became a motivational speaker. And he said, when I came out to the world on February 9th, 2014, I got tons of emails from people telling me how they were condemned for their sexuality. And he said, I spoke to one girl who told me that because I came out, she didn't commit suicide. And I was speechless. So being on the front lines and being the pioneers of change is not always safe or easy, and yet that's where we are in our world right now. Is we need that centeredness and we need that courage, right? Which leads me to a mindfulness walk. And you might be going, all right, so what does immigration and gay pride have anything to do with a mindfulness walk? What it has to do with all of this or any of this is that we are centered in God. We are centered in the higher self, that all the differences, that the labels that we put on other people don't exist. Right? Because what is important and what does exist is that presence and that Spirit of God that dwells within. So as the musicians come back up, I just want to give some ideas about mindfulness walking and what it does. Because what it does is it grounds us into the rhythm of time, of day and night, of seasons and tides. And that some of the benefits of this is that it strengthens our concentration and our focus, that it can help release worries about the past or the future. It can support creativity and other ideas. It can calm difficult emotions. And guess what? With mindfulness walking, you can do it anywhere. You can do it just about anywhere. So are you open to engaging with me in a mindfulness walk? yes. And again, you're free. If you would just prefer to sit, you're certainly free to do that. And I'm going to be speaking we'll do this for probably a total of 6 minutes, maybe 7 at the most. And I will be talking to you periodically through this, just to get you to think about different things. But what is important is that you find your own pace. We're not going to walk in any order, like you have to walk this way and then that way. I'm going to invite you just to stand up and then just walk to any place in the room. So if you would do that right now, just if you're willing, stand up and walk either to the center aisle, to the side aisle, to the front. And then I invite you just to stand still once you find a place that is yours. And so if you would, take a deep breath. And feel the contact that your feet make with the ground. And when you are so moved, I invite you to just start walking in whatever direction, in whatever speed, in whatever way speaks to you. And as you walk, notice which part of your foot leaves the ground last. Notice the pivoting of your ankles as you take a step. Feel the bend in your knee as you walk. Has your breathing changed at all? With each step, pay attention to the lifting and falling of your foot. Notice movement in your legs and the rest of your body. And whatever captures your attention, come back to the sensation of walking. And now allow yourself to expand your awareness and your attention to this whole room as you walk. And shift your awareness to your sense of smell. Simply noticing. paying attention to the sounds. And now move to vision, to colors, to objects, to whatever else that you see. Keep this open awareness of everything around you, wherever you are. Nothing to do, nothing to fix, nothing to change. Fully aware and walking. So in these last moments, heading back toward where you were seated, coming back to the awareness of the physical sensation of walking. Notice again your feet touching the ground. Notice again the movements in your body with each step. And if you would remain standing when you are ready to end your walk. Standing still for a moment. And if you would, consider how you might bring this kind of awareness into your everyday life. Be conscious of your breath. Be conscious of your awareness. Be conscious of this holy ground on which we walk. And wherever you are is always holy ground. And then when you're ready, you may be seated.